Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all doing good. My name is Matthew Eshun, and this is Jesse Johnson, yeah. And then Kweku Buachi. Those of you who know, all of us, you know, probably know these guys more than you know me. But we had a few conversations over the past weeks, and we decided just come sit down and kind of put our mind, because I've had a conversation with each of them quite separately about classical music in Ghana in general, and what we can do to help, and what we can also contribute to, getting classical music a bit more vibrant in the country. These guys have done quite phenomenal work with Afro Classical Nights, which I'm going to ask them about. So I decided to bring them here and then have a conversation with them about what they see about the state of classical music now, what you think the future could look like, and just with the flow we are going to go on tangents on different aspects of the Ghanaian classical music scene, and then we see how it goes. So thank you very much for working. Thank you very much for making the time. This was I just messaged them last night and then asked them to come speak with me. So this is I really appreciate your time. So let's just take a starting with just tell us about yourself. Tell the audience about who you are. All I know is you are Jesse Johnson, and you are Afro Classical Nights COO and director. You know, that's all I know about you. Okay. And then you play a bit of violin, but that's all. So please tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm Jesse. I am a programmer, a software engineer by profession, but I have a lot of interest in the arts in general. So arts and history and culture. Over the last 10 years? Last 10 years, I've focused my attention mainly on music, on classical music, art music, other related themes in Ghana and outside the world, and that led me to start Choral Music Ghana with a friend of mine, also a programmer, as an organization that was meant to showcase the best of Ghanaian musicianship to the rest of the world, and at the same time try to improve the state of music appreciation in the country. Then out of Choral Music Ghana came Afro Classical Nights, which is an event that essentially allows practicing classical musicians in Ghana to have a space that they can showcase what they've done to an audience that is deeply interested in what they have to offer. That's just a broad overview about me.
Okay, I'll come back and ask you a few questions about, but let's go to Honorable Kweku Buachi.
I am Kweku Buachi from Congo, and I'm a composer. At the same time, I'm an orchestrator, and I do arrangements and also do copying of music. That is to say, those who have written music with manuscripts, and then they like it to get it typesetted. I do that kind of thing for both solfa notation and then staff notation as well. Yeah, so basically that's my profession. And also I'm the music director of Afro Classical Nights. Usually before every show I try to fish out musicians, and a lot of musicians also contact me to get a chance to perform on their show. So that's basically about me.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so let me come back to Jesse. So you are a software engineer.
Yeah.
But then you are interested in
the arts
and classical music. I'm curious to know, is it because you had an experience with it when you were younger, a family member plays, or you went for an orchestra performance and you were fascinated about? I want to understand where the interest
in music specifically comes from.
Yeah.
So it's mostly my dad.
Okay.
Mostly my dad. I don't know where he developed that interest from. It was probably from his school days at Achimota. But my dad is a fan of classical music, and throughout our childhood he would expose us to a lot of recordings from Handel, Mozart. We had this we had these records, those records.
Oh,
those
Apawa.
big- I didn't know that's what they called them. Yeah, we had these.
Yeah, more Muntichi in Power.
Yeah, he had a set of like the complete set of Beethoven's symphonies, plus several other recordings. So once in a while we'll play them in the living room, like lights off,
I see.
and then this thing, and yeah, it was nice. Like it was something like we all engaged in as kids. Like for instance, the Queen of the Night, aria. It was something we used to sing a lot. My sister always nailed that piece. So and we had some also like some odd pieces of music, like medieval Christmas music, for instance, that we listened to one Christmas. So I'll say that's where my interest in music started. And then of course, like as a church goer, I was exposed to church music. With the Catholic Church, our music usually leans towards the traditional. So I had a lot of exposure to that. But then things really got serious after my sister joined Park Square KNUST.
Okay.
So from her first year in KNUST, she was bringing a lot of music home, singing and stuff like that, and that brought me in direct contact with music as it's practiced in Ghana. So I'll say that was aside from the background that we all had as kids, that was like the catalyst that brought me into my current activity with music.
Okay, but I mean, so that's what got you interested in classical music, because of the recordings and your family history and all that. But then you went ahead and not just listened to it, you decided to set up a whole institution to promote that. How did that all come about? Why did you decide to do that?
I think for that that's how I am. That's how I am, because
like to solve problems. So a program what do you call it? Software engineer.
I've got an entrepreneurial side to my character, an enterprising side to my character that likes to make new things, right? Because I remember when I was interested in poetry, like at the height of my interest in the literary space, among other things, I started a blog on poetry criticism, right? And I joined two other older poets to start the Poetry Foundation Ghana. Like we're trying to formalize something. So I find it natural that given my interest in music, there would come a time when I would want to do something around the music space. And then because at that time, like I was an ex-chorister, but still within the choir space, my direct focus was on choral music, hence Choral Music Ghana, right? But then that's quickly will attest to it quickly grew beyond choral music. So the name currently is a bit of a misnomer. Because there is an underlying broad interest in music that we naturally expanded into.
Okay, very interesting. Koku. Yeah. Please tell us about how you got in, because you told me a bit that you did IT.
Yeah.
And then now you are an arranger.
He's a programmer. He didn't just do IT.
A programmer, arranger.
You have to sell me.
Because I also have a completely different background, which I'm gonna see a little bit about. But please tell us about your journey.
Yeah, for me to started when I was a child. I used to have a toy. There's these kind of toys that it's like a toy tape player, something like that, and it has this toy cassette. And then I had one that played for release. I had one that played Mozart's Ankleinach, and then I had they were playing some, but I loved for release the most. I used to use it to sleep, and my mom even teases me about it till date. But since then, my mom herself is a lover of classical music. Her grandfather was a composer, and then he's part of the composers that translated the Presbyterian hymns from English to Cree.
What's his name?
So Timothy Atefa.
Okay.
Yes. So the Presbyterian Church that was founded in Achimota. He's one of the, should I say, He's one of the people who spearheaded a lot of this education in the Presby Church at that place.
And not to cut you, which year is this?
Yeah.
Isn't it like in the 1800s or?
I'm not that old.
No, I mean for your grandfather.
So let's see. So like maybe 30s, 20s, or
Oh, I see.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where it all comes from. And I grew up in Deeper Life. I was born and then I grew up in Deeper Life. We had an orchestra, but there was some kind of difference. I was seeing the orchestra, usually playing hymns, but when I watch TV, I see people playing classical music. So I was confused, what is going on? Why can't Deeper Life people play, classical tunes? But I was more interested in the classical music and choral music. When I completed JSS, I ended up going to Pope John Senior High School, and by then I had started some keyboard lessons. I was not too good, but when I went to school, I met the likes of Francis Eshun, who was one of the main keyboardists of Harmonious Chorale, and then he was a keyboardist at Tech. The University Choir.
Oh yeah,
the University Choir of KNUST. Yes. And then also I met one Dominic Andrews. Dominic Andrews is also currently, I think, the chief organist for one Methodist church in Osu. Yeah, so I met all these people and then they helped me to grow my talent. So actually, I was still interested in expanding beyond choral music because I realized choral music is everywhere. So I learned how to read notes, how to write music, and I wrote my first composition when I was in high school.
I see.
Yeah, final year. So I took the hymn Angels We Have Heard on High, but I wrote a solo to it. Yes, I wrote a solo to it. Unfortunately, the one who was supposed to sing the solo fell sick, so we couldn't premiere it.
That's such a shame.
Yeah.
I see.
But I didn't let it break me down. I continued to write more songs, and then I also learned the art of orchestrating. So actually, the first orchestra I orchestrated for was the Deeper Life Orchestra. And from there, I just decided to learn more. And later on, I joined the National Symphony Orchestra. That's after going to Hotenka University, studying ICT, getting depressed because I was not getting the time to do music. I had to leave and then come back, and then I joined National Symphony. I learned a lot from there. I got some closure with the instruments, so I got to understand the limitations of each instrument, how to maneuver my way around, how to there are a lot of these rules that I learned from there, and that's it now. So currently, that's what made me the composer I am today. Yes, and currently my main focus is on trying to advocate for the composition of orchestral music that is identically African, that has an African identity. It may seem like it's pretentious, but I mean, even when Europeans come to Ghana, they still want to hear something that's authentically African. Yeah, so I think there should be a way by which you should give them that, not always playing Serenade in G by Mozart. And you should give them something that is part of us, something that's our classical music. Yeah.
Okay. We'll come to that topic a bit later about the idea of African classical music. But I want to just continue dwelling on the Afro Classical Nights idea. So eventually you started Choral Music Ghana, and then that also grew, and then there was an offshoot of Afro Classical Nights. Why that name? Why Afro Classical Nights?
To be honest, because it sounded good. That's
okay.
Yeah, the whole thing started because Choral Music Ghana is an online organization, and I felt like in order to be taken more seriously, we needed to ground ourselves in the real world. So I had a couple of ideas I was tossing around with friends about things that we could do, all centered around events, obviously. And one of them was the Ghana Month of Music, which was like my take on the BBC prompts, plus some other thing attached to it. But then like I actually remember the specific spots that the name came to me. I was in the Trotsky at the Shiashi Junction.
A lot of ideas come in the Trotsky.
Yes, just before we turned into the road that goes down to Spanner, and then the name that just crossed my mind was Afro Classical Nights. Yeah, and I was like, I like the idea. What is Afro Classical Nights? And obviously the name suggests classical music within the, like, because we're talking about CMG, but then also something African oriented, right? So the reason we justify how I justify the Afro to myself was that the performers at the event will be playing classical music, but then they'll be wearing African attire. So remember,
I've never really thought about that. The first time I performed, I also wore an African shirt. I don't understand exactly why I wore it, but I don't know if you told me to wear African shirt.
We used to put the instruction on the flyer that dress code Afropolitan.
Exactly, Afropolitan.
I guess,
which itself is like it's a portmanteau of African and cosmopolitan. Which actually in a way describes the essence of modern cities like Accra. Right, which are African, but they're not African in this.
Wait, so you coined the word?
No, I stole it from African Regent Hotel.
So that the reasons have to explain to everyone what
Afropolitan is. Yes, I'm sorry. yeah. But then, like over time, especially with Kweku Boachi's involvement in ACN, like we are sort of like come to realize that there should be a space for African classical music. So in that sense, the Afro can extend to that idea, right? Yeah, but then at the very start it was just aesthetics.
Okay, I'll come back to that. So tell me how, because my first experience with ACN was in 2019 when I came to perform there, and I've never been invited again for some reason. I don't know why. But anyway, this is not a time to throw shits. But anyway, and then I had never met you. I don't think I had ever heard about you until, I'm not sure when I first had a contact with you, but eventually we met, and then musicians are friends even before they meet. Anyway, so how did you now get involved in Afro Classical Nights?
Okay, when Afro Classical Nights started, I was in Ho, and I think the first show, it was a pilot show. I couldn't make it because I was busy, and then.
And this was this was what year?
That was 2018.
2018.
Yeah,
2018 was the first.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think for some reason Jesse felt he didn't want to disturb me, so I was not invited to the show. But I think the second one, by then Presley Joe Black was the music director, so he gave me some pieces to learn for Franklin Jima. She's a singer, and then
now I remember where I saw you play piano. Yeah.
Yes.
You're not big like that. Now I remember. Okay. Sorry. So that was my first performance over there. I think I performed my composition. The Taylor song. I don't even know where that score is. Oh God. Yeah. So that was my first time over there. But as time went on, I think Presley also got busy with stuff, and then he had to, move away from the show a bit. So I became the music director in his absence, and since then I'm the one who has been taking. And I think currently I'm even the host.
Yes. He also doubles as a host.
Okay. So your name is Kweku Boachi Frimpong.
Yes.
But my first interaction with you was Black Handle, and I heard that name on one of the WhatsApp groups. It's a guy called Black Handle. It's like, who the hell is that? And why that name is so strange. So can you please explain to us where that name comes from?
Growing up, I first of all, I was an advocate for Handel's music. I loved his composition so much, especially choral music. That's why his instrumental music, I don't really fancy it, but his choral music is beautiful to me. And people used to call me black. Some people call me Black Cat. Some people call me Black Messiah. Like black. Like
why?
Because of my complexion. But
Okay.
you understand. So and also my favorite color too is also black.
As you can see.
Yeah, and when I started composing, people started nicknaming me say Handle because some of my choral compositions resemble that of Handle. So somebody just stood up and was like, "Let's call you Black Handle," and that's where it started from. I now it's a name that makes me cringe, sincerely.
Okay,
it's bound to happen.
Yeah, I wish I didn't have that name.
Why does it make you cringe?
I want to be the black Kweku Boakye Frimpong, not the black version of a white man.
Okay, so there's the race bit, identity,
and the fact that we have to fall on someone's talent, especially a Caucasian's talent, to be able to have that kind of validation.
I never thought of it that way, but I get what you are trying to say.
Yes,
yeah.
Because now that's what it looks like. People hear Kweku Boakye Frimpong and they are like, meh. But when they hear Black Handle, hey, who is Black Handle? So I wish it hadn't been that way. So right now, I'm beginning to wonder. Okay, so do people actually appreciate what I can do because I am Black Handle or because I'm Kweku Boakye Frimpong? That's what I'm saying. It's a name that makes me cringe.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Anyway, guys, we're still having conversations with with JC and former Black Handle. Okay, so for me it was quite curious because I think when you started Afro Classical Nights, I was out of the country. 2018 I was there getting whipped by my violin teacher in South Africa. So I never really noticed it until I think there were a couple of videos on the internet, which I think I got from Presley.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because he used to rave about it quite a bit, and that's how I got. I was like, oh, okay, what is happening in Africa regions? Okay, let me go check it out. And Presley was the one who was like, hey, you must come and play, whatever. So that was my first experience with it. My experience with it was quite mixed. One, because I was coming from a very different way classical music was performed, where there's no talking, there's just the music. And so my first experience, especially at Africa Regent, was quite uncomfortable. I mean, I played the music. I don't even know that the people enjoyed it. I don't know, because there was just too many people moving around, and I guess perhaps, I don't know. I mean, this is just conjecture at the moment. As to whether people even liked the music I was playing, or they appreciated the skill of playing the instrument and all those other things. Because from my experience back in South Africa, there's a concert hall. You come, the lights are on. The moment the musicians get on stage, lights goes off and everybody's quiet. Everybody just listens. When the music is done, you clap. There's no movements. There's nothing. So that was very unusual for me. There's nothing wrong with the setup, but that was very unusual for me. But then I realized that has been I don't know how it is like now in Ghana club, because it's a bit more enclosed. So perhaps it is a bit more different. But I've watched a few of the shows, and there's a lot of talking and a lot of fidgeting and things like that. And I don't know what you guys think about it. I have my own opinions about why it shouldn't be that way, but that's just my personal opinion. But I guess the audience that are there like it in a particular way. They've grown to like the way things work and things like that. That's why I said it's my own personal opinion. I wish things were a bit more different, but I'm not the director, I'm not the COO, so it doesn't matter what I think. No, what matters is what the audience think, what audience think about the whole show. So I want to kind of ask, what went into creating that whole idea? Because you wanted to give a platform for classical musicians come and display the skill that they had. What was the plan in terms of context, in terms of atmosphere, in terms of now bringing? Was the emphasis on the music? Was the emphasis on the musician? So who did you want to bring into the limelight? Was it the music, or was it the musician? Was it a combination of both? And what was the philosophy around audience interaction with what is going on?
Those are actually very good questions. Okay, so to understand how and why Afro Classical Nights has that vibe, we need to understand where it came from. So the direct inspiration for Afro Classical Nights is NPR's Tiny Desk concert. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Yeah. I'm not sure how I even chanced upon it, but then I found myself watching these YouTube recordings about from Tiny Desk, and it's just to give our viewers context. It's a series of performances by the at NPR at an editor's desk. I don't remember which office the editor is in, but then the performances are literally behind the editor's desk. So if you watch any of the videos on YouTube, you'll see the performers standing in an office space, a crowded office space, and once in a while,
books
and once in a while the camera will pan to the audience and you see everyone huddled, standing quite close to the place, but huddled there and watching the performances. Now this is a recording series that has hosted people as varied as I've forgotten the famous cellist's name.
Yo-Yo.
Is it?
Yo-Yo, Alicia Keys, T.I., and the like. So the very first time I saw that, right, I was like, if people as big as Yo-Yo and Alicia Keys,
please hold that thought. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go for a short break and be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming back. Now, Mr. Johnson was talking to us about NPR and how that inspired Afro Classical Nights. So, yes.
So, my first reaction was that if musicians of that caliber are willing to perform in a crowded space like an editor's office without all the glamour of the stage, right, and they're willing to perform, like, not just perform their highest level pieces, right, but then give intimate interaction around their music. If musicians of that caliber are willing to do that, there's no musician in this country that has any right to demand the most sophisticated stage before they perform. Now, I was saying that because I've been involved in events, like musical events, since before Park Square. I joined Park Square KNUST, but then that informed my understanding of how choirs organize themselves in Ghana. And I always found that there was a lot of friction when it came to organizing events, right? Because as soon as you speak of organizing events, the first thing that comes to mind is budget, and the first thing that comes to mind is lighting, sound, videography, photography, venue, and those things balloon costs.
Transportation.
Exactly. So then, before you realize it, we're looking at 20,000 cedis to organize an event, right? That's not bad. However, again, going back to my history with Park Square, I found out that during my time there, I was a lot less interested in performing, or as they say, ministering with the choir, and I was much more interested in coming for rehearsals. I was one of those choristers who would always be present at rehearsals, but then at the day of performance, somehow I'll go missing, right? Because I loved the music, right? And a rehearsal is like an extended period where you get to engage with the music, right? Usually at a much more intimate level, right? Because of all the number of hours you spend during preparation before the actual event. So, with all that in my mind, right, watching this thing go on in an NPR editor's office, right? It essentially told me that, like, when it comes to like, I don't know how to put it, but then we should find a way of getting people closer to the music without all the other distractions, like finding a great sound engineer, finding good lighting, renting a venue, and nice thing, right? And in my mind, a simple room with a piano was enough to hold a concert. You didn't need to rent the British Council. You didn't need to rent the National Theatre. Once you had a room with a piano, you could organize a concert, and people who love music will come. So that's like one of the seeds that informed Afro Classical Nights, actually, before even the name came, right? And the thing that so like essentially all I needed to do to prove the concept was to find a room with a piano and get someone to come and do something, and then people will come and watch. Then Mother's Day 2018, I went to the African Regent Hotel at a friend's insistence, and I saw that they had a piano in the corner of the lobby, and I was like, this Afro Classical Nights can work here.
That's piano.
Yeah, legendary piano. Previously, I'd been to the Goethe Institute, and I'd seen that they had a nice hall with actual seats and a piano too, which would have also made sense. Right, so I struck a few conversations with my friend and spoke to someone in management at the hotel, and they said, sure, come and pilot your thing. And I told Presley, and I was like, sure. But Presley really liked the idea, because on a totally different note, he had been having an argument, a long-running debate with another of his musician friends about how to promote classical music in Ghana. That gentleman thought that education was the way to go. So people should be taught. People should be taught about classical music, so they'll appreciate it more. Presley was of the opinion that frequent performances would increase the appreciation of classical music. And apparently, I had gotten to a point where I was proposing something that will ensure that performances of classical music can take place monthly. Right, so then he was like, yes, I'm in this. And then we did some and then put together a program and did a pilot show on the 2nd of August 2018. And then a month later, the hotel said that we should have our program there. And there was validation for our events, because I remember Presley was always excited about the fact that, hey Jesse, between you and I, we've been able to host more programs than this other guy that he was debating with. He was excited about that, right? And for me, it proved the concept that if you have a piano, just call someone to perform by it, and just tell people that this performance will be happening there, and people will come. And it was so successful. I don't know, Presley is a bit of a marketing genius. I don't know how that's about. It was so successful that a lot of times people will come and everyone is standing there, just like the NPR. people will just come and stand for like an hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours to watch a live performance, and they'll go away. And
just like there was a time Jedu Ambule came in, he was standing by the bar and told the show.
Jedu Ambule came for Afro Classical Nights. He was standing at the bar watching it. See, we didn't need to rent National Theatre. We didn't need to hire makeup artists to make sure all the performers are like. We didn't need to do decor. We just said that come at this place. There's a piano there. People will perform. And yes, like I mean, with time, like things grow, and that's actually one of my fears, that it will grow, in the sense that the logistics involved in getting the event like set up will increase, because at some point Presley became a bit agitated about the fact that people were standing too much, so we started requesting chairs from the hotel, right? And then like even back then, all the recording was just on an iPhone 7 on this specific tripod that we are using right now, and I was taking photos. So like I think they had a mic and a small thing that the MCU used to speak, but then performances were all raw, right? Like we didn't need to let sound engineering get in the way of people experiencing the music directly. And then my initial idea was actually a bit more formal than what had happened when Presley got involved. Like, Presley was a bit of a joker, right? So his MCing took it towards a different tangent that the show has kept even after he moved on. So then that also added to the informal atmosphere of Afro Classical Nights, and because of that core idea that we should try to remove as many obstacles that get in the way of performances, the show has retained this sort of rawness. The show has retained this sort of rawness, even though like the production, the logistics involved in the production has increased because now we do streaming. People are mic'd for the stream and stuff like that. And I'm always fighting with Kweku about that because I want to get back to basics. But other people on the team are like, well, it has to grow. Yeah, it has to grow. So we need to invest in this. But then, so to answer your question, that's why Afro Classical Nights looks the way it looks because of that background.
Okay, I want to ask, do you have anything to say about that? Another take on?
Yeah, and when you even look at the Romantic era, there was a time whereby classical music was moved from the halls of the nobles and then the halls of kings to, taverns, the bars and all that. Frederick Chopin was not really performing in front of kings and stuff. Okay, he was performing at places like these public places, and I think we wanted to replicate the same thing.
That was actually in the proposal.
And you're not the only one talking about the informal setting. In fact, a lot of people have actually talked about it. Some people are even against the fact that people should even wear jeans, trousers, and then an African top. He feels they should be in their best suits and all that. the last show we had someone in white and black and tie. I'm like, yo, why are you deeper life, Pastor? Relax. Yes.
I see.
So I think we wanted to. I feel as if people will be more receptive of classical music in that setting.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. It definitely removes a barrier.
Yeah, because they almost every time, let's say maybe almost every month, people go to official concerts at the National Theatre and all that. They go there, they keep quiet, no clapping and all that. And Afro Classical now, where we feel every Friday night, they have to come and relax, and they are trying to stifle them again. It will be some way. So at least let them feel free. Let them order something from the bar and then drink and. Yeah. I know at times it's too much, especially.
At times. It can be jarring. It can be jarring, and like just to what do you call it? As a disclaimer, I'm not against formality in classical music performance, and I don't think Kweku is against. And like, I mean, there should be space for that. There should be space for that. Yeah, but then it's like Afro Classical Night has created this sort of thing, right, that we are allowing to remain what it is. Yeah.
Okay. So thank for the explanation. I'm curious about the audience. Okay. So the idea is to get people to promote classical music. Yes. What caliber of audience were you initially looking for? Because in Ghana we have a lot of people who don't care much about classical music. There are people who have heard about it, they think it is beautiful. They've heard, say, Harmonious Chorale do Messiah, for instance, and they are using the keyboards and things like that. They are doing awesome performances, and that is when people get, perhaps this has to be studied, I don't know, but this is where people's first interaction with classical music and Handel and whoever. So that whole idea of formality, of suit and tie and proper sitting and no talking, no clapping, all those stiffness thing, like you say, might scare some people away. People who really love classical music and have been partaking in that culture for a very long time. That is more or less what they know. It's the atmosphere. So what kind of audience are you able to attract? Are you able to attract people who who like that vibe, or you're attractive. You're even able to attract people who are very much used to the formal type and now want experiencing this new vibe, sort of.
I think basically now it's attracting anyone who is curious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we've taken it to a point whereby, yes, we have those who want an informal set and they are satisfied, and even those who prefer the formal set, and I think they've come to understand that, okay, classical music can also be done this way. Yeah, I think Presley was trying to bring something whereby anyone from the audience who can play an instrument
will come.
I don't remember.
I think so.
Although
I think he's called out people in the audience before, because a lot of musicians tend to come. Even just on that note, I remember the November 2009 show.
2019.
Sorry, 2019. The November 2019 show. While we were preparing, it was a Christmassy thing. While we were preparing, this American who had literally just landed in Ghana, said she wanted to partake in it. She's a singer apparently, and she said she wanted to do something. So we incorporated her into the program. That's how random it can be. Yeah, that's how random it can be. In terms of like type of audience, right? From my perspective, I don't think we've been very intentional about the audience, and maybe that may answer your question, the question you had earlier about where the focus is on the performer or the audience of the music. I don't think we've been very intentional with the audience. We try to get as many people to come, so you have like random people show up at any event. Although they are mostly young, they are mostly our age mates.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think mostly whereby you have an indirect effect is the fact that we try to discourage a lot of sacred music, especially from choral music. If you want to perform something from Messiah, we won't allow you.
Why is that?
It's it's the same reason why we don't allow synthesizers or electronic keyboards at ACN. It's specifically because the common experience of classical music in Ghana has certain specific things that make it up, and we are intentional about not trying to recreate that, right? Because why put in so much effort to do a show if it's going to be just like what every other person does?
Every time. So what happens is that the audience, you hardly find like choral music, serious choral.
The people who like the high life, they are not satisfied with anything until there's high life.
You will not find them there. Besides that, people
who like classical music.
Yes.
Yeah, people who have any interest in classical music will come. Yeah.
I didn't know this. It's quite interesting. No Messiah, no Elijah, no.
I mean, like once in a while they pass through, right? But then ideally,
but I mean, before you even sing such pieces, the piece should be interesting. Like it should be not just interesting. Like it should have. Okay, can the piece be used? Can it be examinable by ABRSM? like I don't know if you get me. If
I'm trying to get the religious slant.
So think about it this way, and this is actually really important to the core mission of ACN, right? So for classically trained musicians and singers, the usual outlets they would have is the church, right? Which constrains what they can perform. Right. So, but then music expresses a lot of stuff, right? And all those things also need an outlet, right? So then the creation of this program, this platform is supposed to allow that to happen. Now, most platforms are dominated by religious interests, right? So then on our part, we feel a need to guard against that, at least a bit. Right, so it's not as though there's no religious music being performed, right? But then, for instance, if we can avoid this, there will be no religious music performed. If we can avoid it, there will be no choral music performed. But we have had, we've literally had a choir
Yeah, 8 sonnets.
8 sonnets.
The group of 8. Okay, that it was 7.
It was 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bias standard is essentially a choir, right?
Yeah,
but then you understand that within an environment heavily dominated by a certain tradition, we would want to separate ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
If Afro Classical Nights were in let's say London or New York or something like that, it will probably be heavily biased towards African music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you can get Beethoven anywhere.
Yeah.
In that setting. So why come and do that there? You get it? Yeah. So yeah.
I see. Okay, so back to the music or the musician bit. I've watched a few of the concerts, and you say you invite people to come and showcase what they've been able to do. The question that for me has still not been answered is when the musician is performing, are we? What is the focus? I think I'm just repeating myself more or less. What is the focus in terms of the audience? The audience are there watching the musicians perform. Some of them are there because their friends are performing and things like that. So, what is the focus? Or what is the focus? Is it on the artistic work? Because there is this whole. I think we've even had this conversation about the arts or the artist. Which one is? I mean, I think they are both important.
Yeah.
But from outside looking into the program, I have the impression that it is more about the artist than the work.
Than the work itself.
Which is fine, because I mean the composer of the work is dead and gone. It's not going to complain. But when the artist is performing, what is the idea behind the response?
Yeah, from the onset, the plan was to actually put focus on the artistic work that they are doing and the artists themselves. But it happens that how do I say this without sounding offensive to other people? okay, let me
go ahead.
So there are certain people who come and then you realize, okay, this person has a potential, but should his repertoire prevent him from being performed? If he can perform something as simple as what volume is it? That would be so simple.
Minuets in G bar.
Let's say something.
That's not even easy, but you go.
Okay. Yeah. So let's say something like that. Basically, we should have been looking beyond that. But you can see this person has potential, and this is probably his best. Should that stop him or her from performing? I think it shouldn't. So fine, we will allow. But I think such people, we invite them on the show again. We actually suggest pieces. There are times where we suggest pieces.
Yes. Like he tries to push people. Usually when people come with religious work, he suggests that.
Yeah.
I see.
No, see, our viewers should understand. We don't have anything against Christianity. I'm a church organist. We don't have anything against.
It's just business.
It's just business. Yes.
Oh, I see. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, but actually, it's true. It looks as if our main focus is on the art. It's on the artists. This should have been the two, but yeah, at times if you focus on both, we will not have a lot of people performing, and some people, so when they don't get that chance,
they want
just go back into their shell. They are trying to fight to bring people out. They don't want to continue keeping in their rooms. I
think we empathize a lot with the artists. Right, and that informs a lot of what we do, because like for instance, the at times there are quality problems, right, with performances, because certain people, they get there and they panic, even on a stage as small as ACN, right, and some people are honestly not that impressive, but then at least like in terms of let everyone have a chance at this, right, with that mindset, we allow people to do things, but then like even with that, we are a bit deliberate, because like in terms of preparing the music, sometimes Kweku is deliberate about, for instance, who should play first, who should we like insert in the middle somewhere? Who should conclude? Because concluding has to be
On a high
strong.
note, yeah.
On special events like our anniversary events, Kweku usually reserves like the best. Yeah, but then, I've made this remark that back then when I was learning the violin, right, I was doing a lot of practice in the kitchen at home, right, and I've made this remark that like the people who practice in their kitchens should also have a place to come and showcase what they've done. Yeah, because like this thing requires a lot of investment, and if there's no outlet with positive feedback, you go and do pop music because it's a lot easier. Generally speaking, yeah. So I think
I didn't say it. He said it. Okay, but that's all fantastic about ACN but this is going to be my last question about ACN. We can talk about other things if you're not too tired. So, what do you think the impact of ACN has been since 2018? So this has been like 6 years, more or less, about 6 or 7 years. Yeah, what do you think the impact has been?
It's scary.
Trying to promote classical music. Do you think you've managed to achieve your goal in terms of promoting and getting people to like come out and just play and things like that? Do you think you've achieved your goal?
Honestly, Kweku will be the best person to answer that. The only thing I can say is that like the primary goal of anything, which is to perpetuate its existence. At that, I'm sure we have been successful at that because the show is still running. Yeah, but in terms of impact, I think Kweku gave a better answer.
Okay, I'll say we are still achieving our goal. Okay, with respect to promoting classical music, we are still achieving it in the sense that we still not reached a wider community. There are still a lot of people who go like, what is Afro Classical Nights?
Yeah.
And we have some people too that surprisingly say that, hey, I know you from Afro Classical Nights. I'll be like, oh, okay. So that means we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to promoting classical music. But when it comes to promoting the artists too, I think we have almost done a good job at it. I think it's through our show that some people have gotten gigs. Some people have been showcased to
they've gone to wider platforms.
Yeah, they've gone to wider platforms. We've had a number of like performers, especially singers who have been on the show and through Afro Classical Nights. They've gone to certain places, and I think, and there are certain people who actually come to us that they need written like recommendation, and through that recommendation,
recommendation
for like
school and stuff.
That they performed at.
Yeah, they performed at Afro Classical Nights.
I see. Interesting.
So I think we are achieving that goal too.
Yeah, from where I sit, I feel like there's a lot more ACN could do, and it's a conversation Kweku and I have constantly about what we are not doing right or what's missing.
Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, it must keep existing.
Yeah, I think we even want to start going into the schools. For example, we'll choose a day, University of Ghana, and then we'll come and have a program there. But it all boils down to sponsorship. I think that has been our major headache.
Yeah, because it's entirely self-funded.
Yeah, it's self-funded.
It exists on the generosity of people.
Yeah.
Right. If the University of Ghana said, hey, if you will take Ifwa Sutherland, you're going to, for the next week, you can run shows there. And I'm sure we'll find ways of doing things. Right. I mean, just like how the African Regents Hotel told us that, hey, you guys can have the lobby on this day. And we made it work. And the Ghana Club said, hey, you guys can use our piano on this day, and we made it work. Right, that sort of patronage is important.
And I think even through Afro Classical Nights, when people need to use the Ghana Club for say rehearsals and some sort of performance, I think they get to use the place. Some people actually use our name as care of.
Yeah.
Well noted.
And it's opened avenue. Imagine if you could walk into Goethe and use the piano as a rehearsal, because it's there, it's maintained, and the people who maintain it love musicians and want musicians to inhabit their space. That's what the Ghana Club has essentially done for musicians. And it's good. It's good. It's important that more spaces open up right? Because, like for instance, how we're talking about a potential space for for a recycle, like someone with a large enough living space can say, hey, let's do it here, and we'll do it here. Nice piano, nice seating. It's simple.
Yeah. But thank you very much for the conversation about ACN. It's been quite illuminating. So this takes me on to the next discussion that I want to have with you, particularly about performance, the issue of entertainment and performance. So there are two ways to look at it, more or less. There are people who call themselves, even classical musicians. Somebody like Lang is a great performer, but he's also an entertainer. Like the way he plays and all his mannerisms and things. I don't think I am an entertainer when I'm playing. I'm more or less performer, strictly about the music, just play. No extra musical things. You know what I mean? But I think this is more of a philosophical kind of conversation. But what do you think in terms of your experience with ACM and the series of performers that have come to perform? Some come, they don't come back. Some come and they are quite irregular and things like that. Which ones do you think connects with the audience more in terms of people who entertain? They come there and they are not nervous. They are really excited about being there and coming to play for people, and people who are just really about the music and we're just trying to play the music right and things like that.
The bias will be more towards the entertainment, and that's because it's more honest. Like fundamentally, it has to be engaging.
Wait, the entertainment is more honest.
Yeah, in that it's about eliciting a positive response or some strong response from the audience.
Okay.
Right now, music, like a performance that is more focused on the the technical delivery, let me put it that way, can also be entertaining if the music itself is entertaining, right? That's why I said the entertainment is more honest, because it goes straight to the point of trying to eliciting that strong reaction from you. So like, rather than looking at it as from a let's say a more music centered to a more entertainment centered focus, I'll take it a level higher and say that like at the core, like performances are best when they elicit a strong response, usually a strong positive response from the audience, right? And going a little down, the music itself can be that entertaining, like can be that powerful, or the way the performer delivers that music can also cause that same reaction. Like that's also a separate artistry that the person can bring into it. But then, like from the perspective of a showrunner, you are happy when everyone is happy. Like imagine if at the end of this thing everyone is so excited, they are clapping, they are like people are just overwhelmed with it. You'll be happy as a showrunner because you know you've done something. But if everyone is like, yeah, this was good, it was like perfect, and they walk away, it's good. It's a good response
in a different way.
Yeah, but then it's like
you feel as if he wasn't satisfied.
There's a certain emotional quality that is different, right? And I'll say I have a stronger bias towards that. Like even as much as I respect the more cerebral response, like like once you go beyond this one into the
I see. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I also go, especially from the side of AC, and I think I'll go with the entertainment aspect. Let me use an example. The Epia Brakwan I composed. When I was done, I asked myself that, what nonsense is this? Because after listening to the whole thing to the finale, I'm like, okay, let me just send it to RSQ and see what will happen. And when they performed, in fact, they played it better than
the way you thought, imagined it.
Yes, and I think that's the entertainment aspect of it. And my sister did psychology. She one day did an analysis of each of the members of RSQ. That's Rotolo String Quartet. That Calvin, the way he's emotional and then making sure that he, plays the music well. That's a choleric. And James is all about, okay, yeah, I'm also playing, let me be serious, okay. And then he's just gentle, that's a melancholy. And then Fifi just dancing and carefree. If he makes a mistake, like he just slide some way, that's a sanguine. And then Bernard, who might even forget to score, sorry.
Bernard.
Stray bullets.
It's just play. Bernard is also, a bit carefree, and then he will also play, and then, he looks like a slow but sure. Like, you think he's not doing it, but you hear that he's really playing the thing.
Yeah.
That's the flavor.
You feel his presence.
You feel his presence over there. So it's like, that scene alone is like entertainment, different emotions coming together. But from the sense whereby, like, recital, most of the time, some of these recitals, you're expecting professors of music, professionals like yourself around and things.
Professionals like myself.
Yes, of course. You get it. So, like, everyone is serious. You're supposed to play note for note. Like, I think for that, it's more like impressing your superiors than entertaining them. I think that's different. But I think for our side whereby we are trying to promote classical music, if it's not entertaining enough, I don't think we are doing. I don't think we are doing the way.
I'll push back a little bit. I think often, and I agree with what you said about the music itself, because of its composition, can be by itself entertaining. But that also depends on the audience. Because somebody can go and play Flight of the Bumblebee and whatever. It's like, what is all that? But for people who are connoisseurs of classical music, they find that extremely impressive. The virtuosity it's just the virtuosity just to show off how fast you can play something, or how easy you can play something difficult. But then that will also depend on the audience, because I came to play Wieniawski's Legend a few years back, 2019. With Emmanuel, with an audience that are connoisseurs like Emmanuel, like a few of my other friends who are very much particular in classical music, and not the people who just find it entertaining. The people who really are really into playing and follow classical music a lot. They find that kind of playing very impressive, and they're like, dude, I've tried to play, I can't even play Minuet in G, but this guy, it's like, hey, Bosu or whatever, or the video that I made quite recently, for instance. People who play the instrument, or play the cello, or play any string instruments, find that very impressive. For regular people, it is the Family Guy section and the fact that I repeated it that they find entertaining. As to the virtuosity or the complexity,
found that part entertaining.
and the whatever, it's like, cool, but it's just the repetition of what the guy did. That's, or the whole drama of doing this, wearing my spectacles, and
you told a story that
you get what I mean. So I guess it depends on the audience. There's this other aspect of performance where it is really just about. That's why I asked about whether it is about the musician or it's about the music, or the musicality, or whatever it is. Because for some people they've heard the music before. They want to hear what the guy has to say with his playing, a new interpretation, a new way of playing the piece. Not something out of the world, really. Sorry, guys, we are sitting in the University of Ghana in front of the BAM Library. People are just passing around, so apologies for the background noise. But some people are very much interested in how accurate you are playing, your intonation, your musicality, and all that, and all the extra musical things about whether you are doing this or you are doing that, or you are playing the piano, you are raising your hands and doing your face something. It doesn't really speak to them. It's really about the artistry and your ability to bring out the music, because the music is not about the notes, it's really about the sound, your ability to create an atmosphere with the way you are playing. So that is where the issue of and I might be wrong, but some people might find that entertaining. Yes, he's a performer, and this is coming from the person who is actually doing the performance, whether he's an entertainer or he's a performer. They overlap, of course, but I feel like the overlap only happens with the audience who are watching what is going on,
like in the mind of the audience.
Yes,
that this is entertaining, or this is just really a lot of musical notes and the person did great and all that. I don't know if I'm making sense, but there's a lot of, I think, overlap here and then, and the idea of even a performer and an entertainer, and if they are separate things or they are one in the same thing.
Yeah, that's actually a very.
I think the point about the audience, I think it's very, very important. We brought a drummer, a djembe player, to come and play. Sincerely, I don't know about you, but I was scared. I was like, let me just. I was just making I was just gambling. Let me see if people will like it. Yeah. And I think Albert is in charge of our sound. Albert was not really okay with it, but I was like, let's just try. And it was received well. At a point in time, when he asked the people to clap, they were all clapping along. They all participated.
It was connecting.
Yeah, it was connecting. So you can see over there, he was actually entertaining the audience because the audience really loved it. Yes. I think later he had to change to playing the Atenkabeng, and it didn't go also. Everyone was just...
It was the performance lag.
Yeah.
Was that the day that German flutists also performed?
I don't
because
I
think so, and I think like in terms of like these wings, right? The strength of that guy's performance was just like on top there compared to like the more dull thing our friend did.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, like that. So I think you raise an important point, right? Which comes down to, like, again, like, as you mentioned, like this thing happening in the mind of the audience, and like you already hinted at, it really comes down to what the audience is able to draw from it, right? Because I in my experience of church music, I actually have that sort of thing where a lot of church music that tends to be lively, like the high lives, and the rest don't appeal to me.
Okay, so you don't like so, and that is where that's what I think even there we be able to even separate the performance and entertainment bits, because the Orthodox churches, the Catholics, the Anglicans, even the Presbyterians, formally, it's all very cool, quiet. It's only about Jesus and all that, and you have to be, in the spirit and all this. Everything was there were no excesses, so to speak. Everything was proper, and nobody is doing anything extraordinary. But now church music is entertainment. There are lights, there is smoke, there's all this flashiness and all these kind of things, which we have.
Even the point you raised, for example, the high life, there's this culture that we've lost now in church. When it's time for, especially the singing bands, to sing high life, then they turn on the percussion on the keyboard, and it does not make me like high life anymore. When I see a choir singing high life and I see those things, I hate it.
Prefer the actual drums.
The actual drums over the people are playing. There's the hatches.
You're an orchestrator, so that's
yes, I want to see that to me.
So it's like, so what he draws from it is different. So whereas someone will be entertained because of the liveliness of the music.
Yeah.
There's a certain thing, there's
The aesthetic
an essence of it that
yeah.
is lost on him,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so it doesn't move him. It's similar to me. Like, I like hymns. I'm an amateur composer, and I literally almost only write hymns, right? So
About 5 anthems.
so the kind of, you know, the danceables, they don't move me. But then when I'm listening to hymns and listening to how like the different voices weave into each other to create a unity, like that moves me. Like that's where I draw my entertainment value from. That's where, so perhaps entertainment may be overloaded in this context, right? But then like that is what captures me. That's what actually like, that's what engages me in that. So like speaking to what you were saying, there are definitely some people who, let's say, let's take something like Mozart's Rondo alla Tecca, right? For certain people, the technical accuracy is what gets them. It's like someone can play note for note perfectly, right, and it will overwhelm them, right? Like they are beside themselves because this was unbelievably perfect. Whereas someone's internal appreciation will be like, okay, but there's nothing special, right? Do some catcher. Let me feel you.
Yeah.
You get it? So like those will be different ways of drawing something out of a performance. And like you hinted at, it definitely, like, it ultimately lies in
the audience,
in the mind of the audience, how they perceive it.
Because I mean, I look at myself as a performer, not as an entertainer. Fifi is an entertainer.
Yeah, he's a showman.
So you see, even though we do exactly the same, more or less the same thing, because you all play the violin, you all play classical music. He is a bit more also into pop and things like that. But he's an entertainer. Even when he's playing classical music, he's an entertainer. I am more accuracy of notes, that you appreciate the hard work that has gone into presenting the music the way it was written, and the fact that I'm able to say something with the music, and not about a whole lot of other things. Fifi does exactly the same thing. There's that other layer of entertainment, which is good,
like it's equally valid.
Which is equally valid, and I, like I said, it depends on the audience, you know. But this is a very philosophical conversation that maybe you guys can have in the comment and then discuss it somewhere. But I want to move on to something else about African music, African art music, or African classical music, like you mentioned a bit earlier.
What's that? Let's keep it simple to what our professors are telling us. Please.
It's not in me. You know me. It's not in me. It's not in
you know.
me.
So I have my own take on this idea, and perhaps you guys have a different take. I don't particularly think art music is the preserve of Europeans. We could say art music as we know now was invented by Europeans. We can give Europeans that or whatever. At that point, there was nothing really happening even in America. Not much. There's the Germans and the Austrians and and things like that, and the English, more or less. Even the English was quite recent. Compared to the Germans. But at the moment, that style of music or that invention, just like the aeroplane, is being created by so many people around the world. Everybody has their own music that speaks to them in terms of, folk music and traditional music or pop music or whatever it is. And the Europeans also had the same thing. But then they invented this other kind of music they call art music. Quite a loaded term, but they more or less invented it. From the monasteries, the church, whatever, getting to the rich aristocrats and the dukes and the kings and whatnot. And then now it's become, from the late classical period into the romantic period, became more more or less ubiquitous amongst people who were lovers of, when the opera became quite popular and things like that. And so art music, as we call it, for me, has become something that everybody can partake in. It's not only the preserve of Europeans or Americans or whatever it is, just like jazz. And so we have people like Vito Day and Frankie C and a few other popular jazz musicians who also partake in that whole art form and write their own music. They create their own bands and they tour and do all kinds of things. Same in South Africa, same in Brazil, same in all kinds of places. Now when you come to Africa, and even in Ghana and Nigeria and a few other countries in West Africa, it's not as ubiquitous. But if you go into places like South Africa, it's all over the place. People who have dedicated their life and composed African music, avant-garde music, or surrealism, or atonal music, or whatever it is, whichever brand of art music or classical music is created in South Africa and in some other places. And so for me, when you talk about the idea of African art music, doesn't necessarily make so much sense to me. The terminology of African art music. In academia, there's the issue of African pianism. I'm sure you've heard about it. African pianism.
Which I don't really subscribe to, but
and
let's
the scholars are going to beat us here. But anyway, but I think even in Asia, in Japan, in China, in Korea, in places in the Middle East, in Russia, in Eastern Europe, in so many other places, they have their own version of that art music, which is different from all other kinds of music that they do. We don't want to go into the argument of which one is more superior to the other. It's neither here nor there. I have my own biases, but I'm not going to talk about that one here. But everybody has their version of that. You have composers who are trained in that tradition and write music that speaks to their own tradition, more or less. Sometimes a bit of fusion of folk music and things like that, which some of the Europeans also did. Wojak being one of them, Bela Bartok being one of them, and things like that. So that whole idea of dichotomizing art music and African art music, for me, doesn't really make sense, because we are also just partaking in that whole franchise, so to speak, and we're also creating music that connects with our people in that style. So if we compose a sonata and it has like Ken Kafui's Pentanata, for instance, that speaks to that, we can hear some of our local styles in it and things like that, just like the Bachs and the Handels and people, the Chopins and what's composed, the Sarabandis and Mazurkas, and these were all popular things that happened, and they brought some other new interpretation of creating music around these styles, the waltz and the minuet and all these kind of things. So for me, that idea of creating that nomenclature of African art music, for me, doesn't make so much sense because of these reasons. But I'm curious to know, because you mentioned that you wanted in the future, or maybe in recent times, try to change the focus of ACN into performing African classical music. Or maybe I didn't hear you properly, but it looks like you hinted at that idea. And so
I was actually talking in the sense of my compositions. Like I wanted, if you get to a time, compositions by African composers shouldn't be based on Western forms or Western techniques. I don't know if you get me. We should be able to look at music from our tradition and build on that. I think that is because now we're in a different era. Now the kind of music, or let me use the term art music. The kind of art music that we have now is the avant-garde or the 21st century classical music, and is mostly based on using forms that are usually peculiar, that we don't know of. You don't use styles from Baroque or styles that were used by composers like Bach and Beethoven and all that. Okay, I think to achieve that, you need to look at that. For me, let me use mine as an example. I use African rhythmic techniques. I use it both in the rhythms and melody. Okay, so I can use maybe something like a simple rhythm like pa-pam, 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 and I can use it to compose a melody. And then after that, I'll bring other stuff involved. That was what my final year project was based on, such that I use African traditional rhythmic techniques. I use minimalism, which simply deals with repetition. The beauty of repetition, because African music is usually minimalistic, because there's always repetition. You have ostinatos just repeat, or notes just repeating, and also modal jazz, in the sense that we don't always have to fall on tonality. Why should music always start from do and end on do, or should start from la and end on do? You should be able to start from re and go and end on ti, because that is how African music is. If you listen to how our traditional folks make music, especially if you go to the Volta region, they start from at times you might not even be able to get a tonal center, or even for those of us who are in the like Methodist or Presby, you hear the Ebibinyum, they can start from any point in time and then end. You will not be able to get, okay, this is the tonal center. Yes, we should be able to. So that's what modal jazz also does. Modal jazz does not place importance on a tonal center. Okay. So these are the stuff I combine together to make my own music. And actually, I made a framework that composers can. It's a suggested framework that composers can look at to compose music such as that. So I think that is what I'm saying. My focus is not necessarily Afro Classical. In fact, I don't want Afro Classical Nights to only be concerned with African pieces alone. Otherwise, we are going to create another problem. Serious problem.
Okay. All right. So the idea of tonality. I mean, if you look at tonality historically from early music, medieval, Renaissance, whatever, I think the idea of tonality, of course, has changed over time. The ones that we learn in school are the functional harmony, chord 1 to 4 and 5, and cadential, what, all the cadences and things like that, which seems to be a technique that Baroque and classical musicians use a lot, and even a lot of the romantic composers used a lot. But in the 20th century, there was a lot of trying to break away from all these functional harmony and things like that, and then veer towards atonality. I don't particularly think African music is atonal.
No.
But our tonality is different.
Yes.
In the sense that it's not well tempered. In terms of the way you can find accurate notes on the piano or the violin. Because right now my ears are quite well tempered. So if I hear Atenteben, for instance, I'm like, that's completely out of tune. But for people who play, the idea of out of tune doesn't even make sense. So it's different in that way, but it has its own tonality, so to speak. Perhaps the C that I hear, which for me sounds in tune, and the C is a bit different. There are a bit of difference in the microtonal, what. But this is something also that happens in India, for instance, in their microtones and things like that. The way they write their music, the way they sing, and the way their instruments are constructed around that kind of tonality. So I mean, I agree with the whole idea of creating music that is a bit that doesn't follow European rules of creating music, and I'm all for that. I want a lot of African music. I've been asking you to write me music. You've rated me only one, which is unacceptable. But
add more.
But anyway, I think I mean, you as a composer, I'm not a composer, so I don't know any of those techniques. The only thing I know are the things that we learned in school about writing fills and writing 4-part harmony and all those.
That's actually a lot that you've learned. So you are learning about fugue there. You've gone ahead.
So we learn all those things in school, I don't particularly use it for much because I'm not into composition. But I mean, you are doing things like that. But I mean, for me, it is I'm more interested in the philosophical discussion about nomenclature. I mean, I don't think even nomenclature is a right word for it, but about naming things. That okay, because we create music with influences from our local music, then now that is African classical music. You know, somebody might make a very good argument for that, which is fine. But what do you think?
I don't even know where to begin. But I think
he and I have had an extensive argument on this.
I kind of see where you're coming from, right? So like essentially you're sort of saying, it's essentially you're arguing that music is music, right? Is that what you're arguing? Yeah, and so like trying to
and ours is just an extension of that idea.
Yeah. So trying to sort of like latch onto something as an African classical music is like some kind of coup because it's just music, right? And it's sort of like, I don't want to use the word, but I'll use it. It's sort of like aping what Europeans have done before, right? Like they have achieved these heights, and so in order to seek validation for your musical expression, you are going to ape what they are doing by pretending that you are doing something of that caliber. Is that what you're leaning towards? Like sort of like part of the reason why you don't really fancy the term is that sort of.
Yeah, I mean because I think it's like saying African aeroplane.
Yeah, whereas a plane is a plane.
A plane is a plane, you know.
And if it's been done before, it's been done before. So
yeah,
like, there's no need to Africanize it.
I mean, we could say, okay, this car is a German car because it has German engineering. There's an African car because it has African engineering. Unless, if you want to, you are creating something that is uniquely African about it, or uniquely. I mean, and you even using the word Africa is just too ambiguous because Africa is there's just so much going on in terms of culture and in terms of philosophy and things like that. So let's even say Ghanaian classical music, for instance. Okay, what does it really entail?
You know.
In fact, I would say I've not heard the term being used. Okay, but the funny thing is, when visitors come from outside, they ask, are there any Ghanaian classical music? Funny enough, although it has not been defined, I know what they are talking about. They are talking about the Ghanaian version of what they enjoy over there. Because most of the Western classical music we hear are based on, their traditional forms. Ritornello, rondo, all these dances that they were doing, the waltzes and things. Okay, that's what they were used to, or that's what they were doing. And it's like their forms have been, built on that. So I think they're also looking for that version over here, Ghanaian classical music. Okay, so music that is based on Adowa form or dance, that is based on Palogo form or dance. I think that's what they are looking for. For me, I don't think naming or categorizing is a problem. The problem with us is documentation. We don't document our stuff well. Okay. I think even if we document our stuff, or even without naming stuff, it will get its name on its own. I don't know if you understand where I'm arriving at.
Okay.
If we were to document Adowa well, Adowa dance very well, we are teaching the steps. Everything is written in books. When it comes to the ensemble, every part is notated, and throughout the years, composers have actually composed music based on Adowa form, such that instead of saying that okay, this form is Ritornello form, we say no, this form is Adowa form. Okay, now it's become something that is established. When a European comes, I'm looking for Ghanaian classical music. In your mind, you know what it's talking about, although you've not named it that way. When you give it to them, it sets. It becomes something that is there.
Okay, so this brings me to the idea of, and I think we discussed this a bit at the music department a few weeks ago, about the idea of music theory. That the music theory that we learn in the universities are basically can replace that term with rules in European art music, more or less. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because I mean, when you are learning to compose and write and learn that art from, sometimes you have to learn from where it came from and things like that. But upon years and years since Philip Beho and Ephraim Mamu and all those guys, and people even earlier, up until now, there doesn't seem like there exists a theory for how, for instance, if you are composing a piano sonata, or let's not even call it sonata, a piano piece based on Adowa, there's a textbook that you can go and take and say, okay, these are the rules, because there's a textbook for how to write fugue and to write fugue in a Baroque style and to write canons and symphonies and things like that. There are processes and procedures on how to do that, but it almost seems as though our music only exists in the indigenous setting. It is only performed. People perform it. They do whatever. They know what they are doing. There are certain conventions that they are following to play what they are playing. And it's more or less, for me,
it's still an oral tradition.
For me, it is more or less the repetition of things that they've done for so many years.
Yes.
I don't know if there's room for creating something new. Or
okay, actually, there's this guy Kofi Ganaba.
I don't know if there's room for creating something new in terms of
Kofi Ganaba is the type he used to play a fonton from. He creates his own rhythms. So even if it is maybe if he's playing the gong, he doesn't have to play ka 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 ka. He can play ka 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 ka. He has created his own rhythm, so I think there's actually room for that's a bit.
No, but you see, I don't know this for sure, guys. But was he creating it in the context of the way, in a different context? Because we have Ayiko drummers, for instance.
Okay.
Those guys they play phantom from that. They're traveling all over the world, and they are doing their own thing. Something quite similar to what the traditional people do in the whatever, but. They are exploring the drum, they are exploring rhythms, they are exploring all kinds of things. And it's quite different because a lot of the things at Adowa, for instance, is quite functional where we perform it, but what I think we've not been able to do, if somebody has done it, please send us the paper or send us a recording or whatever of how we've been able to extract the theory from how Adowa music is created, and use that to create other things, because that is where for me people might disagree, and that's where for me the art,
the seriousness.
Seriousness is quite a derogatory term, but that's where the artistic part of trying to use something. Using a words, which is a dance, and creating something new.
I chance on some papers that have actually done that. Adowa rhythm, they've written Adowa rhythms. If it comes to Agbaja, they've done that.
So the rhythms have been written down. That is not the problem. The rhythms have been. The people have written the whole. They've transcribed the whole ensemble, all the instruments and the things that they have. That has been done like in the 60s and the 50s. That's already been done. Ketia did many of them, and a few other professors also did that.
So if I'm to get to you, I'm talking about the sense whereby how to create music out of them. Actually, that's what my paper has done. It has actually developed a framework.
Okay, so maybe we should.
So I think I'll share it.
You should dedicate one day so you can come and talk about your paper, your work. But what do you think?
I think I like so. I like where the discussion has gone, right? Because essentially, right, what you are lamenting, right, is the lack of a viable artistic institution built on top of these traditional forms, right? And by artistic, you know what I mean, like cerebral, like that sort of intense intellectual development of the fundamental ideas picked from the folk culture, right? And listen to what Kweku was saying about the expectations of non-Ghanaian classical, European classical musicians coming to Ghana and asking what your classical music is. You can sort of see that they are coming from a background where there has already been enough development of their traditional music to the point where there exists an artistic tradition, right, that they are drawing from, and then they come into a place like Ghana and asking if you people have also done something similar. You know, like how, for instance, you can trace the development of European art music from like traditional dances into more formal musical forms that are based on those, and you can see how like certain traditions, like for instance, I think my favorite in terms of the evolution of music is the symphony, right? From the Symphonia, which was essentially like a musical interlude to some other thing, right, into what Beethoven did with especially his ninth, but his series of symphonies, to the point where the symphony became such an important thing in the world of European art music that the name was even dropped in certain contexts. So you can just talk about Schubert's Sixth, and you know we're talking about the symphony because that is how important the symphony is. So there's a thread of development, right, from, let's say, weaker forms to stronger forms, right? To the point where there exists within the culture an art institution, right? An art institution being like a tradition, right? An artistic tradition based on these sort of things. And from Kweku's perspective, like he sort of suggesting that when such people come to Ghana, they're also asking if we have something similar, right? And then from what you are saying, it's sort of like certain fundamentals have been done, right? The documenting traditional musics, right, has been done by ethnomusicologists in the past, but then we don't seem to have built on top of those things, right, to create like, to develop a kind of artistry that we can call our own. You know, it's a bit similar to how at a later period Eastern European composers started taking their traditional forms like the majorca, the polonaise, these things, and started developing them in a way that Western musicians had done in previous centuries, right? You are familiar with that.
Yeah.
I don't know how far they took those things. I think they essentially adopted Western forms and grafted their music onto, which is essentially sort of like what we are doing, right? Like, for instance, a sonata that depends heavily on, let's say, Agbaja rhythms is still a sonata.
I mean,
you get it?
Yeah, I mean, see, and maybe I'm going back and forth. Forgive me, guys. Maybe I'm going back and forth. I agree. Habanera. How do we know habanera? We didn't go to Latin America or wherever to figure out how the habanera rhythm was like.
Yeah.
Until some composer decided to bring it onto the symphonic stage, and you know, and then now you're like, oh, and you're like, oh, okay, this has a nice groove, whatever. I'm speaking to the idea of their traditional music or their indigenous music developed to an extent that they were able to extract. I don't particularly think that is what happened. I think composers are generally very curious people and are looking for inspiration from so many places, and so even writing for instrument was more an idea of, oh, I hear that instrument sounds good, man, let me write for it.
That's actually
but unfortunately for our part of the world, it has only been choral music, more or less, with the adwires and the palongos and things like that. My gripe with this is more or less, how do we teach somebody to compose Nyomkro music rather than going to live with people who perform that and traditionally do that in their community or whatever through apprenticeship before I can learn that.
Yeah.
Learn to create
So
that.
I think it's talking about documentation.
I mean, it's not even documentation.
It starts with documentation.
The documentation has been done.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
But then,
there are a lot of papers and books and articles and theses and recordings of all these music traditions. And Ketia did so many of them. It's in the archive. They are there. My question is, how do, for example, if you are playing the Palongo rhythm, how did they come about creating that rhythm? How do they come about creating all the things that happen around that rhythm, the melody, all these kind of things? What is the philosophy behind how these things are created? So that if you come to University of Ghana or go to Winneba or go to Wisconsin or wherever, and your composition professor is teaching you, he's not just going to tell you, oh, this is the Palongo rhythm, create something about it, or listen to Palongo whatever. But it's like, okay, if you are composing Palongo music, this is what you have to do in terms of the rhythm, in terms of the melody, in terms of so you can create. I think if you are creating a symphony, that is based on the Palongo rhythm, how is that supposed to be? Like,
because there are certain rhythms. It's not every kind of music that you should take and then use it to compose. There are certain rhythms that are actually based on war. If you're actually composing a symphony that's based on romance, you are going to pick a rhythm that's like this.
But even then, I have a feeling our indigenous music, or traditional music, or whatever, folk music, whatever you want to call it, are stuck in a time capsule. And some people might disagree, but are stuck in a time capsule, and they are always the same thing. Whenever they are performing, it's always the same thing.
Like there's no development.
I mean, development is I don't know if that's the right word, but
or evolution.
Evolution, maybe there is evolution, but because there isn't any documentation, we don't know. I don't know how Asafo music during a Yes and Twist time sounded like, and how different it is from the one.
So that boils down to the point of documentation.
It's like,
it's not us. We are not the problem. It started from our forefathers. They don't document. You see, you can't trust.
I have a friend who will say, but oral tradition has served us for a very long time. For ages.
We don't really know our history.
But I mean, we do know our history. Just you have to go to the right places. More or less.
German had to come and write our history for us. I mean,
it starts with documentation. Not necessarily, right? But documentation plays a foundational role in stuff like this, right? But then again, like what you are looking at is the existence of an artistic institution. What you're looking at ultimately is the existence of an artistic institution, right? It's going to, at a foundation level, right? It's going to be documentation. Documentation is going to exist, right? But then what you're talking about is constant engagement with that sort of thing, with that material, in the production of new stuff, and constant engagement with the new stuff and the old stuff. It's just like how we can speak of Western art music as a tradition, right? And we can trace its beginnings and how new developments have evolved from old ones, and where individuals have attempted to push the music based on what they felt was missing, right?
I mean, German music can even trace its beginnings to over a millennium. I mean,
you get to, and we don't really seem to have that. Like, even if the tradition were oral, right? Like, there's a problem with oral traditions. There's a fundamental problem with oral traditions, which is why literary traditions have won the competition so far, right? But then even with like for instance, like within an oral context, right? Like you said, within our oral context, if I want to like learn the music proper. I have to go and interact physically. It doesn't scale that well, right? But if a literate tradition developed around it, I can be in any part of the country, any part of the world, and read as much as I can, and participate in that institution, in that tradition. You get it? So it's yeah. Okay, you ask your question.
Okay, so I think generally a lot of traditional music is transmitted orally.
Yeah,
it's always been transmitted orally.
In fact, you could argue the same for all music. Like music is fundamentally an oral experience.
But this new invention of art music, right from the beginnings, were not really. Perhaps it started orally, and at some point decided to write it down. Even then, the art of notation has changed quite a bit over time.
That itself is a part of the tradition. That itself is a part of the tradition.
So, I'm not expecting traditional Adwa players or Palongo players to start now notating whatever it is that
it's
they are
not
writing.
even their job.
It's not.
So they do even.
It's not part of the tradition, like you said. But those of us who call ourselves art musicians or partake in that technology, who want to write music and want to write music based on these things, these traditional forms, just like people have done with the waltz and the minuet and all those kind of things. What is it in Adwa music that are we bringing to that artistic product we are trying to create? This is just the rhythm, because Adwa is not just about the rhythm. It's more than just about what we call the rhythmic timeline. It's more than just that. There's so much that goes on around the music. What I am suggesting is that even for words, for instance, when somebody's writing a word, it's not just about the 1, 2, 3 meter. There's a lot that goes into the way they are writing the rhythms and what the rhythms predict in terms of people's steps and all these kind of things. And they had the tradition that went with the dance, and then that was also brought into to this new technology that they were inventing. Now, if we have composers like you, for instance, trying to compose Enyonkro music for a symphony, not for voices, but for a symphony, how is that going to work without you going to study with the singers, the Enyonkro singers, and either notating or in-service training or apprenticeship or whatever it is, to understand the tradition before. But you can't, for example, learn, because if you are in an European university and you are doing composition, teaching how to compose a waltz or a fugue or a canon or a sonata and things like that, it's going to be quite easy, because it's all kind of, people have figured out how it is done, and have put that knowledge in a Buddha, people can replicate and expand it to a different level that can even be less similar to how it is performed traditionally, and go to the nth level of how you can interpret that idea, but you can still feel Enyonkro in what they are doing, So that's what I am advocating for. For all music theorists and composers out there.
I think like
no, because I think that is what is going to bring the excitement and is going to help us connect people who want to like European art music, but don't seem to connect with all the ideas and the melodies and the rhythms and all these kind of things. Perhaps when you write our music, we should add dance to it. I don't know. I experienced this I experienced this in South Africa, because our traditional music never really goes without dance or audience interaction. I experienced this in South Africa. There was a whole work with a full orchestra with a huge percussion section that were playing instruments that I had not even seen before. And there was I wouldn't call the person a narrator. He was more like a poet, so to speak. And a choir. And the choir was not just singing. like 4-part harmony, whatever it is. They were screaming, they were hooting, they were stamping their feet, they were clapping, like somebody does something well. Oh, cry, 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 cry. Random, not not nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that whole thing was composed by someone. And I think they were not speaking English, so I'm not sure what exactly they were saying. But the story behind all that thing was Shaka Zulu was getting married. And he has gone to meet the woman's family and blah, blah, blah. I think that is what I might be wrong. And that whole symphonic work, or that whole orchestral work, or that whole work performance was an interpretation of what was happening during the time. So
that's brilliant.
The narrator or the poet or whatever is saying something, and that thing he's saying is maybe the ochiame of the. If you are having a marriage ceremony, the ochiame is saying something, and the orchestra plays something, and the guy says something, and the people disagree, and the choir is more like the community members who disagree what he's saying. Whatever it is, and they are screaming, they are hooting, and all kinds of things. And it was so incredibly fascinating. I have it on my phone. I don't have the copyright to. Maybe I'll show a snippet of it so you understand what I'm saying. So something like that. I saw it to be so incredibly fascinating that you're able to create something like that. If you want to create a piece of music that describes how the king in Menchia Palace and his elders and the Queen Mother and the community people, when they are celebrating a festival, what that interaction is like. How do you go about something like that? This is the kind of kind of creation that I hope that people can do. So you are telling a story. If you're a composer, you go to Bakate and they are doing all their things, and they go into the lake and they for them they throw in, they cast a net and then they catch whatever, and they do all the rituals. And if you want to interpret that musically, how do you do it? Because we have so many stories to tell about the way we live our lives. If you want to create a symphony about Makola and how how it's all disorganized, how it is all messy, how it is all over the place. People are just rubbing into each other, and people are screaming, and people are playing loud music, and the trotros are honking, and the taxis are, all these things. If you want to create that musically, how does that even look like? And I think that is what is going to, that should be, and this is me being idealistic, but that should be our contribution towards that artistic form that we are all trying to partake in. So that, for example, which the music that you created for me, A Woman in Waist Beast, which is going to be premiering very soon. It's a very, very strange song title. It's A Woman in Waist Beast. I'm going to ask him on the day why he chose that title. But if you are creating music like that, for example, Professor Nketia created songs about him. When we went to Dagomba, he created all these songs, Water Fantasy, work songs, and all these kind of things. So that's quite amazing. But that's just for the piano. What else can we do in terms of because people write for choral a lot. There's so much music for choral. There's way too much music, I would say. But when it comes to instruments, if you don't play the Handels and the Bachs and the Beethovens, there's not a lot you can really play when it comes to our contribution towards that art form. I think I've been talking too much. So.
Yeah,
in fact, you've actually opened our eyes to something.
So there's so much we can do in terms of so I think composition for a lot of the composers out there, there's so much ideas, so much inspiration in our country, in nature. If you go to Botifos, what can you write about Botifos and your experience at Botifos, or whatever it is, or about a festival, or about it doesn't matter what it is.
I don't know if you know Gabriel Abedi. You know him. Kubala Bedi?
I don't think so.
Okay, he's also he's a Ghanaian composer, but he's mostly been based in Italy. I think Jesse and I have met him.
Okay.
He has a song that he composed recently, and it's titled in Chin Chim. In Chin Chim. So in Chin Chim is also one of the Dikra symbols, and then in the music he combines, of course, the African drums, and then he brings a little bit of piano, and then this kind of the people who chant when the Asantehene is coming. He created some sort of musical parts for them, so they sing ha 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 ha, like that kind of chant, and then you can hear it going, and at a point you hear a voice in the background, and if you listen attentively, someone praying in tongues.
Nice.
So I think I think with what they are saying, that's one side of the creation too. The Makola thing can also be that brings my mind to the American composer Steve Reich. I see he's Jewish or American. Okay, well, he's mostly been based in America, so American composer.
Probably Jewish.
And then
because his name.
and then the music. He has one music called "Different Trains," and "Different Trains" talks about when the Jews were being displaced during the Second World War, and then he picked an interview, and then he chose different sections of it. And as people were talking, maybe when the soldiers came, they came to capture us. Then he picked just that line. When the soldiers came, they came to capture us. Then you hear the violins imitating the same thing, like melody. Because you know how Caucasians speak, their language is almost melodic. And then the violins follow, and then there's this repetition. Then to switch to another person talking. And then we got onto the trains, and the instrument to be ta 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 ta. And I think this is some of the creativity. I think, in fact, something like that in our settings would be beautiful. I don't know, Jesse, what do you think?
It's essentially the modus operandi, the strategy. I don't know what term to use of making art out of what surrounds you. Right? Because it's essentially that. Like, because it's probably like a guaranteed way of creating new art, right? Because your lived experiences most likely going to be different from that of someone who lived 2 centuries before you. So and it's possible to create an artistic work in some sense in a vacuum, right? Based entirely on preconceived ideas from previous generations of people from other geographic locations. But then I guess, like, in a sense, it will always be derivative, because that work is predicated on other ideas, right? Whereas if you look hard enough at your surroundings, you can find something to draw from and create something original. I think it's a very clever framework for thinking about how to create artistic works that actually contribute something different to the entire corpus of
I know you
art.
don't do composition, but do it for a PhD.
Yeah,
Otherwise, I'll steal the idea.
If you have that sort of insight, you should probably do something about it. Don't necessarily be a composer. You could be a theorist, because there's the last conversation I had with Nketia. He suggested that Ghanaians prefer making and performing their music, right? And they don't like talking about it. And actually, like, I think I asked him, like, his deepest regret or something along that line, and he said that he was really pained by it. He was really pained. He sounded really pained, because it's like, old man, he died almost exactly a year after that. So these were like in his last year of life, what was his big concern? People don't talk about your music. Fine, you write your music, you perform your music, but you don't write about it. Right? And so in that sense, like, there's not enough theorizing around the music. Right? There's not enough theorizing around the music. And back to our point about documentation. Documentation is part of it. Like, it props to him and other ethnomusicologists from that time, like, to do the hard work of going into the field, getting the material and putting it down for us. Right? And I have a friend who is doing something similar. I told him he was essentially like going to like fishing communities, getting stuff, and he's trying to source material for some composition. I told him that he should keep the recordings. He should archive the recordings. No matter what he should archive the recordings. Don't get the source material, create your work, present the work, and be happy with it. Archive the recordings. Because I mean, today we can listen to Percy Granger's recordings from the English countryside, English or Australian, I don't remember. But Percy Granger did similar things. Bartok did similar things in his country. That's just one step. But there needs to be constant theorizing around it. There needs to be constant theorizing around it, because, like, for instance, like I'm sure you've read that text on violin playing by Mozart's father. Leopold Mozart. Exactly what we're talking about. He doesn't encompass the entirety of violin pedagogy.
No, of course not. No.
But then he's told you what things are like from his time. Even in the letters he wrote, he exchanged with his son. You get a sense of what music was like in his lifetime. Right? And people have been doing that. So that, like, I'm pretty sure for, like, you can take any 50-year period and you find a textbook or some sort of work written that gives you an insight into performance practice or thinking around music.
All the time. All the time.
One of my favorite YouTube channels, Early Music Sources, is completely fascinating, because you find the guy reading from treatises of music written by Italians in the 14th century.
Nice.
Like, seriously,
Charlie?
Yeah, like they have like serious, like, this is how, these are the various parts of, let's say, an ensemble, and this is how they should move, right? This is you don't make this movement, like,
we don't even know, like, if Okonfanochi was a mythical person. He was indeed real.
For instance, it would be nice if, just by way of example, it would be nice if Barikama actually wrote a book outlining his composition process. It is not a treatise on everything about composing for choral music in Ghana, but it's a snapshot into the mind of the man, so that 100 years from now you can go and look at how Barikama was thinking and what he felt was acceptable in his period. Right? And again, the constant engaging with that. 200 years from now, someone should read that and be like, okay, I like this idea, let me see what I can do with it. And he should also write his book.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've been advocating for this for as long as I can
read.
For as long as I can remember, that we don't write our ideas down. So, like you rightly mentioned, what is the textbook or a treatise or whatever it is on writing choral halai, for instance, or writing a Ghanaian anthem? All we know, as far as I can tell, is that like I mentioned in the car, that the melody should follow the vocal inflections of the language. But apart from that, harmonically, there's a what do you call it, dominant seventh here and there and things like that. And that's more or less it. The rest is just left to whatever it is that the composer wants to do. But I mean, I know for some people they say it restricts the way people work, but the thing is, you want to give people some sort of grounding upon where they can also explore and extend the idea. So how to write a fugue, how to hold a bow, people wrote it down. You know, where to put the instrument on your neck and what to do and how to place your fingers on the instrument. People wrote it down. It's not as if they thought their way was perfect, but they felt like something worked for them and they think that somebody might also benefit from all these etudes that, what do you call it, some of these composers wrote, Chopin and what do you call it, Galamien, and I'm just mentioning people at random, Pierre Rode and Kreutzer and a host Paganini, for instance, a host of people who decided, you know what, there's this technique that I think in writing this music it can help people develop this particular technique. For instance, where is our in terms of writing choral music, or in terms of playing any instrument? or whatever it
You know,
is.
I'm working on something for one jazz musician in the US called Bill McPherson. He's actually even in the country. And he has some jazz compositions, and he wanted the African. First he wanted it orchestrated, but with an African feel. Okay. Now I have to add seperewa because he needs African instruments in it, and I don't know. I'm not finding any materials on the tuning of seperewa. I don't even know how many strings the seperewa has. I've just seen it being performed. So luckily,
You should have just called me, but anyway, you continue.
But luckily, I spoke to one guy. I spoke to one guy called Lucas, and actually he showed me some documents, but it was not enough. So I made him give me the history of the instrument. Before he told me that actually he used to have 4 strings, and later on it's now 8. But even that one is tuned based on the dominant 7th. So that means if you have maybe do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, which is normal, this one will be do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, to, do. So that means while you're playing music, there's the absence of T. It's tall. Every T is made tall.
Yeah.
You understand that? So I didn't know all this. I was going to actually compose for this thing blindly without knowing. So it's very important.
I can refer you to.
I've actually written it down.
You should publish it.
I can refer you to.
The issue.
I can refer you to a guy who is literally writing a PhD
on it
on seperewa.
Oh, beautiful.
Its history and the music and things like that. He did his masters.
Are such theses available to be published by third parties?
It belongs to the university. When you finish writing your thesis, it belongs to the university. So you can go to the university library
And then
or the department library and get it and read. His name is.
We can actually publish an article where we just cite them.
We've spoken about this before, right?
Yeah. So
I know, right? There's a lot of work that has to be done.
There's a lot that can be done. But guys, I appreciate your time. It's getting late.
Yeah.
So thank you very much,
welcome.
Mr. Kuku, Frimpong, and Mr. Johnson. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for watching. This has been a fantastic conversation with these guys. Hopefully we can make another time and have a conversation about something else. Maybe it's something not too political about music, because I know we are going to receive a lot of backlash from the professors because we said something wrong or our conceptualization of something was not right.
And some cars were noisy like this guy.
Yeah, so so thank you very much. We're going to catch you again on our next conversation. Have a good evening or whichever time you are watching this. Bye bye.